You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers and other important people from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us. Well, this week I'm happy to welcome back to the show Miss Delia DeRiggi-Whitton, a Nassau County Legislator since 2012, who in December was appointed the new Democratic Minority Leader by the members of her caucus, becoming the third woman to lead in the legislature's 28-year history. Well, welcome back to this week's Long Island News.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, I know you're probably busy now that you have another position on top of your position.
Actually, today's sort of moving day, so if you hear any loud noises in the back,
not a problem.
It's all going well.
Right. Well, now being named the Democratic leader of the Nassau County Legislature, that's a big deal. But what does it mean, and what do you get to do that you didn't do in your role before?
Well, it is, and I was very fortunate because I have served with Legislator Kevon Abrahams for 12 years, and he was our minority leader for those 12 years. And in the past, I would say the last 4 or 5 years, I had the benefit of being next to him and being his unofficial deputy because it wasn't an actual position. But slowly but surely, I was able to hone my skills and see what he did, and which made it kind of easier for me to step in. So also, I was a councilwoman before, so when you add the years together, I had the most seniority on my caucus. But I will start off by saying that it's a huge honor that my co-legislators, who I consider all friends, I really am so humbled by their decision and their encouragement and their support. And I'm also, honestly, our political leader, Chairman Jay Jacobs, also gave me the nod, which I do not take lightly whatsoever. It's a huge compliment, and it's one that I don't take lightly. So, but to answer your question, the leader basically will try to hold everything together. We have 7 legislators, and number one, we go over the agendas with the meetings. Sometimes if we have to meet with the administration, if we have questions or with other people from the other side of the aisle, we go over the contracts and whatever is coming through. Then we set up a meeting, our caucus meeting, which is weekly, where we go over the agenda, my staff meeting with the other legislators. And if they have any questions, we can get them the information. I have a great legal staff. I have a fantastic journalism staff. And I also have a chief of staff who helps me. So we also, as leader, there's a number of things, but we also keep track of a number of projects that are ongoing. We work on the capital plan, and we have it divided by each legislator again. We have grants like CRP grants, we call them, which go to each legislator's community. So it's up to the leader to kind of not only keep track, but negotiate when the time comes with the administration. And we have hotel motel funding that goes out for each legislator. If there's any piece of legislation, that's another whole thing. Once a legislator has an idea for a piece of legislation, we do a quick synopsis, a short briefing, and once the leader, which is now me, approves it, we present it to the other legislators before we have our legal department write up the piece of legislation. So it's a lot of fun. I love it. I love my job, and this is another whole layer.
Right.
But this is my only job too. A number of legislators have other jobs because it's a part-time job, right. which requires you to be out 5 nights a week and every weekend, and
right.
You work, but it's part-time. My husband always asks me how I manage that, to work 60 hours a week for a part-time job. But anyway,
right.
It is my only job, and it's my full-time job, and it really does take a lot of time if you're going to be on top of everything. And that's what I'm discovering in my first week.
Right.
It is a full-time job, and I'm sure people could do it with part-time, but I prefer to do it as my full-time job, and that's when I'm going to be designating my
Wow.
time.
I don't think most of us realized, what a bill goes through before it actually gets to the point where people say yes or no. So you're writing herd on all of that before it gets there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's very frustrating, I don't know if people understand, Nassau County is divided up into 19 districts, legislative districts.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, there's two parties. It's a Democrat and Republican. So the Democrats have 7 seats, and the Republicans have the remaining 12. So what that means, unfortunately, is as a Democrat, even as a leader, for us to get a bill to come before the floor for like a public hearing,
Mm-hmm.
it has to go through the presiding officer. So technically, only one legislator out of all 19 of us can have that power or make that decision as to what bills even get a public hearing or are ever calendared.
Right.
So it's an interesting democratic system, because in a sense, it's not completely democratic, because not every legislator, I can't say, all right, I want a bill on,
Whatever.
sunscreen, let's just
Right.
say, and have a public hearing and have a vote on it. It has to go through many steps. But again, being in the minority, there is a real challenge with the sense that we don't control the calendar. So we can't have our bills even see the light of day unless the presiding officer agrees to do it. And there's a number of bills that we have. I have one, it's a very simple bill, just requiring that fentanyl strips be distributed through the county. We could use our opioid funding for it. And it hasn't. We wrote that last year, so it's been almost a year that it's just been sitting,
Right.
Past my caucus, we did all the work.
Right.
Yeah, I can't even get a public hearing on it.
Is there any way for the general public to see what those bills are and which ones are languishing on the back burner?
There are. In fact, that's one of our initiatives to really focus on the bills that are pending. There are, especially with the fentanyl, I've had a number, unfortunately, I work with a number of families that have suffered horrible losses, and they have come and asked that the bill at least have a public hearing, which I'm very surprised about, because these strips cost $1 each, and in $10,000, we could really do so many. That's all that I was asking for, is the initial wave. The only downside would be that they're supposedly 85% accurate, because it's possible for a piece of fentanyl to be in a pill if it's in the middle, and the strip might not detect it. But in this world where fentanyl is showing up everywhere, it's the only tool we have to detect it. And again, fentanyl's not even, Narcan's not even 100% reliable, but we do the Narcan training because it's the only tool we have.
Right.
And if we save one life, it's worth it. So,
very interesting.
But yes,
where
we're
would
going
we
to have
go?
the list.
Where would we go to
public.
see? Where would we go to see that list if I was on my computer?
We're going to be making, that's one of our initiatives. The Minority Caucus is going to be really focusing on getting out some of the legislation that we have in the hopper.
So there is no place now, really.
No.
So we can't even see what's being held up. That would be interesting. I think people would like to know, besides who's voting which way on what, we would like to know who's holding up what. We've seen it. We've seen it nationally.
Yes.
We were just talking in the room here about Republicans only passed 17 bills last year. 17 bills. And my first question is, I wonder how much that cost.
I know, per bill.
Right. Jim Jordan's been in Congress for 17 years. He's never introduced a bill and never passed one. And I wonder how much that costs. We're also worried about money, but here we are, and it seems the people who get to decide how we spend our money are most costly.
I understand what you're saying. And writing legislation, in my opinion, is one of the most important parts of our job. I can give you a couple examples. One that I did write that was passed unanimously was, believe it or not, with fracking water. When with the fracking industry, the wastewater is the problem with the fracking industry. So they have to find different ways to get rid of the wastewater. And one of the ways they discovered was to make these little pellets that DPW can use to melt snow. And the reason, and this has been used in other counties, and supposedly it was used once in Nassau County, but I never had proof of that, but it was being contemplated. The reason why they melt snow so well is because they're radioactive, and we live on top of our water. So anyway, we found this, and we worked on it over a summer. I had some really good interns that helped out, and that bill passed unanimously. And then the 5 boroughs, all of Manhattan, came and took the bill, which I was happy to have, and they used it verbatim. They didn't change one thing about it. And then I think there was 18 other counties upstate took it. So, I mean, there's some serious, I'm always about the environmental and health. I mean, even plastic bags took us a long time, but we did ban that. We banned, a number of different things in it.
Yeah. Well, I have a bone to pick with you about the plastic bags.
I know. My husband doesn't like it either.
Well, the ongoing joke is people at the supermarket pick up, prefab bologna, I guess you could call it. It's wrapped in plastic. Yeah. Every item they pick up, they put in their bag, in their cart, is wrapped in plastic. And then they get to the checkout and they're told, we can't give you a plastic bag because it's bad for the environment. So
I totally agree.
My question is, and the optics are, if it's for us, we can't have it. But if you're a business, if you're employing people or you're doing any of those things that are part of, well, then it's okay.
Yes and no. The way I looked at it.
Show me the no.
It's better than nothing. I mean, you know how many bags we have first of all, bags are the number one. Those plastic bags are the number one pollutant in our.
I'll give you a good example. Keurig coffee makers. Who let those go into production without even addressing the fact that they were going to create 3 landfills in Staten Island of K-Cups? How did it even begin to be sold?
I agree. But we're working on things slowly but surely. I can tell you that. And it's one step is better than no step. That's the way I look at it. But I will tell you something else I just learned. We can't even recycle a lot of the plastic around because PFAS is used in them. And the reason PFAS is used in them is to make like the cute little designs in the plastic. I was trying to remember what we did before plastic at the supermarket.
Paper. And
so what do we do with bologna? We put it in
and those, I think before,
how did they sell it? I can't remember.
Before Oscar Mayer came out and started putting it in packages, I think people bought it separately at a deli. They sliced it for you and put it in wax paper, and you took it home. And those were things you ate right away. It's not like you kept them around for months.
And what did we do with the vegetables when we bought vegetables? I'm not saying anything. I think we're almost the same age, but I can't remember. What did we put them in?
I think kind of the same thing. People bought fresh vegetables and they brought them home.
So where did you put them? What if you're buying green beans?
They wrapped them. They wrapped them probably in that same wax plastic paper that, although we called it plastic, it's not today's plastic.
We have to really, I would love to see us go back.
Just go back to the old days.
When the 70s.
Went down. Right. Well, I'm talking way before. When my mom was a kid, they went to the local store and they bought a quart of beer and they brought their own pail and they dipped it into the barrel. And people today would say, oh, that's not, but it worked. It worked for a long time.
Well, you know what? I think the next generation who I work with a lot, they're doing composting in schools. I have another piece of legislation about that. Right. And I think there's so much more. I read something about a year ago that said ever since 1968, which is really when plastic and other things really kicked in, we've destroyed our world, basically, between the water and the climate change. And guess what year I was born? 68. And I hate the fact that
you're a young lady.
That's my legacy. My lifetime has been the time that.
It coincides with going to the moon, and we got a lot of new things that came out of developing those things. We did,
and a lot of diseases are cured and things like that. I'm not saying it's all bad, but we just thought we had all the room in the world with the oceans and everything else. And now we're seeing we don't. So, but the next generation, I have these kids come in, they are brilliant and they are passionate because they know that this is their earth. Yeah. They only have one and they're going to, I think we're going to see a lot of changes coming. I'm trying to do the little ones like the plastic bags at the supermarket.
I got you.
Yeah. There's a lot that has to be done.
Yeah, there really is. You're listening to this week's Long Island News on the Voice of Nassau Community College. 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and my guest today is Ms. Delia DeRiggi-Whitton, a Nassau County Legislator since 2012, who in December was appointed the new Democratic minority leader by the members of her caucus. Let's move on. And Newsday reported on the priorities that you had mentioned in taking this new job. And the first was ensuring the county retains adequately staffs its Office of the Inspector General to vet county contracts. I think I know why that's important. Why do you think it's important?
Well, I lived through the Mangano years. County Executive Mangano was here. And I have to be honest, we did not have an Inspector General. It's an independent office that scrutinizes all the contracts and requires all the backup be present before a contract is approved. So you're talking about the contributions the company made, any type of complaints or lawsuits that the company has, any connections like your brother or sister relatives. So the Inspector General is a position that the Democratic caucus fought for. We got it by holding off bonding, basically. That's the only way we got it. Mm-hmm. And they did it right before Laura Curran came into office. And there's a lot of indications that they don't want to, meaning the majority and the county executive, in my opinion, has not moved to, number one, reinitiate her contract. She's working without a contract right now. And there's no mention of it. She's a holdover. And the whole idea of having an independent office is for her to have job security. You can't really be worried about your job and criticizing or questioning a contract that the administration is sending down without worrying about the repercussions. Mm-hmm. So there's no mention of them renewing her contract. It's already past the time. I'm afraid they're trying to either get rid of the one that we have now, who I believe is very good. And the only thing worse than having an Inspector General is having an Inspector General that is not
with no teeth
taking the job seriously. Yeah, like they had in Oyster Bay, the town of Oyster Bay.
Well, we saw that in the National Congress. They had an ethics committee for Congress, but then they took away all their ability to do anything about anything. So it looks nice in the TV pictures, and but
it's worse as a legislator myself. If I know the Inspector General okayed it, like right now, I know what she does and I know how thorough she is and I feel comfortable. But then if it's an Inspector General that who knows who it could be? It could be somebody that's very in with the party or whatever. How knowing they okayed it doesn't give you any sense of comfort. It almost gives you a false sense of security, which is worse.
Yeah, or no sense of security, which is worse than that. Yeah, because you start to question.
I was in jail for 12 years, and I think about that. That's horrible. That's horrible. Mm-hmm. And you never want to see that happen. That destroyed his life, and you don't want to see that happen to anybody. And on a selfish side. So that's why I literally can't see what would be worth putting that at risk again going forward. And you might say, "Oh, we won't do anything." Sometimes things happen that maybe we weren't aware of. And that's why having another eye look at it, I'm all for checks and balances. And she's a really good one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't exactly remember the quote, but it was a quote about people who have power and have no oversight, have no reason to do the right thing. It's that simple. And we have a lot of institutions in government that it blows me away when I hear somebody had to sign a non-disclosure agreement when they went to work for somebody.
Yeah, I know.
I wouldn't even know what to say to that. So,
and then honestly, I don't mean to think, I try to think there's good in people, but you could just miss something, sometimes. We as legislators, you need the backup. Like you need to have the more people that look at it, the better. Because all right, yes, there's the malintent, but there's also just volume sometimes. And you really need somebody that is focused just on that. And then we still look at it. Believe me, we have our own people, but at least we know it got through the initial review.
Yeah. I think, one of the biggest parts of critical thinking is the idea that you too can be wrong.
100%.
You know, well, most people who claim to be critical thinkers won't necessarily agree to that. But I think
Did you read *Sapien* yet?
No.
The book? Oh,
No.
It's a good book. I just and they just talked about that.
Right.
That's really a sign of intelligence, is knowing that you can be wrong and maybe that we don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
years
ago, everybody thought
they call them fanatics for a reason. Right? It's the knee-jerk reaction. And I heard another really good quote that a little knowledge can result in stubborn certainty, where a lot of knowledge usually results in an open mind.
Correct.
So most people know one thing about a politician, and that's why he stinks. Oh, he's terrible. What else do you know about him? Nothing. The sad thing on Long Island is if you walk out in the street and ask people who their senators are, they don't know.
I know.
But they are vehement about their political opinions. It's mind-blowing.
I just remember being a freshman at Hofstra, and they said, one of the professors said, what college teaches you is how much you know, how little you know.
How little you know, yeah.
How little you know, which is a really good way to look at it, because you learn about one thing and then you realize there's 5 other things that go with that, and that really is a good way to live your life, I think.
Well, I feel I've always felt that way. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
I don't know. And that's what college shows you, or even not even college, just reading and everything else.
So the next on my address list here is we're asking about the poor financial condition of the Nassau University Medical Center. Do you know anything what's the latest on that issue? And I think it's odd that the one entity that's having financial trouble is the one that probably helps the most people in the community.
The hospital, I have a very good idea that I can't get moving. So we have $70 million in the opioid settlement funding right now in the account.
Right.
It's sitting there. They've only distributed $2 million. So we had $72 million. Now we have 70. We're getting another $30 million from CVS in the settlement. Now this settlement is pertaining to the use of opioids and how pharmaceutical companies understood their how addictive they were, and didn't really share that information as well as they should have. So they were found guilty and they were fined. And now Nassau County is getting our percentage. That money is sitting in an account that could be used to make Nassau Community Medical Center into a really big hub for opioid treatment, prevention, and everything else. Right now, I have this happen quite a lot. We deal with a lot of families that are struggling. I had one at 2:00 in the morning. The kid decided he wants to go in for help. I could not find a bed for him. So the availability of beds are a real issue. And also, insurance pays for 28 days of treatment normally, if that. And it's really been shown that you need 3 months of no opioids to get the person off the addiction. And you can actually see that via MRI or CAT scan of the brain. The receptors in the brain when you're addicted to drugs are very large when you're addicted to opioids. And they're locked in there. But by the time 28 days, it's shrunk a little bit, but it's still bigger than it should be. And there's cravings and all will still be there. But in 3 months' time, the receptors go back to where they were before somebody started with opioids. Just, I'm sure that's what I've been told. There might be a little variation per person, but that's a basic. So we could pay for that. We have the empty floors. It would do both things. It would save the hospital, and it would do what this money is intended to do. I will tell you this. I just did a column on it. The budget director, I won't say his name, at our budget hearing said that we are using the interest that we're getting on the $70 million in our operational budget. And we are using the money, having the $70 million in our reserve to help our Moody's rating. So the money that is supposed to go out to save our kids and save these people that are suffering is actually being used to improve Nassau County. And we have a huge, right now we do have a lot of money in the bank. So it's not as if, but it should never be used for that purposes.
No. I was going to ask you that question because I knew somebody wants to keep it in the bank because that's a lot of interest.
Yeah. The interest and Moody's rating goes up when you have when your reserves
sure.
are larger.
I'm curious, is there a time limit on that money? Federal government
but there
gave
is
them,
a time limit on our ARPA money, which is COVID recovery money.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to get the exact number, but I think it's like 260 million is still sitting in an account for that, which is just amazing to me. And they just transferred 10 million for a gala / celebrations.
Oh, we're having a party.
For 125 years of Nassau County, which I'm sure was like really high on everybody's.
Well, every politician in the world gets to get up and give a speech, right? Or at least that's what they're thinking.
I'm not going to. I can tell you. I support tourism. I support all that. But this money was supposed to be used for. We have a huge water. The only capital funding that it can be used towards is anything connected with water. Not to get too gross, but a virus and water are connected, So, but we could do so much with our sewer system with even a little bit, like Suffolk, South Shore with Freeport, with all their flooding and their sinkholes.
Mm-hmm.
This money could be really used for things like that, not for parties.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. Oh my! Well, I have so many more questions for you. We could probably do about 4 or 5 shows if
anytime.
Okay.
Feel free to contact me.
We definitely will. You're the key position there now, so we really get a better picture of what's going on the whole. And it's politics is scary these days.
I always say I don't like politics. I actually hate politics, but I love government. So they go hand in hand. I really do love government. And I love, we're able to help some people. We're able to meet so many people, hear about so many things, get some real good projects done. Mm-hmm. But politics is, I've been in it for a long time and it's getting worse. Yeah. And even just in my career span, it's getting more divisive more than ever. Right. And as someone I really consider myself a moderate. I grew up, my husband's a Republican. My family was all Republican. I'm a Democrat, but I'm as down the middle as you can be. And I think most people are that way, but the 10% on both sides are really hurting us.
Yeah, so. And they're also getting all the attention from media, yes. Which is a whole nother, I think, late-stage capitalism thing. But that's In any event, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I know you got to be busy.
My pleasure.
My guest today has been Ms. Delia DeRiggi-Whitton, a Nassau County Legislator since 2012, who in December was appointed the new Democratic Minority Leader by the members of her caucus. And of course, we want to remind you that, they spend their time working for you, but they gave us a few minutes to come and let us know kind of what's going on. In any event, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. I'm Bill McIntyre. Remember, you can listen to us by searching for this week's Long Island News wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're right here every Friday on the radio at 3 p.m. on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.